When you look at a world map, it feels so permanent, right? So fixed. But the thing is, it's not. It's actually a living document, a story of power, conflict, and identity. And every single line on that map was drawn with the ink of history. So, have you ever wondered why the map looks the way it does? Why is one country a nice, neat rectangle while its neighbor looks like a chaotic scribble? Well, it's no accident. The answer isn't just about mountains and rivers. It's a story of powerful ideas and even more powerful armies. There are very, very deliberate reasons behind every single one of those lines. To really get how our map was drawn and constantly redrawn, we first need to understand the rules that countries are supposed to play by. So let's dive into the three big ideas that pretty much shape our entire modern political world. Okay, first up is sovereignty. Think of it this way. Your country is your house. Sovereignty means you are the absolute ruler of that house. You set the rules, you decide who comes in, and no neighbor can tell you how to arrange your furniture. Simple as that. It's the fundamental right to be in charge of your own territory. Next, we have this idea of the nation state. Now, this is kind of the ideal situation where the borders of a country perfectly match up with the people of a single culture or ethnicity living inside them. Truth is, true nation states are incredibly rare, but countries like Japan or Iceland get really close. Their cultural and political borders are almost one and the same. And that leads us to our third principle, self-determination. And this one is an explosive idea. It's the concept that a group of people who see themselves as a nation have the right to choose their own destiny and form their own state. This single idea is why the number of countries on our map has just skyrocketed in the last century. So when you see these three ideas laid out together, it really clicks. Sovereignty is the right to rule. The nation state is the dream of a perfect alignment between a people and their land. And self-determination is the right to choose that state in the first place. These three principles, they are the engine of modern politics. So yeah, those are the rules. But for a huge chunk of history, those rules were completely and totally ignored. Now let's look at how the map was shaped not by high-minded principles, but by brute force, by empires drawing lines purely for their own benefit. It's really crucial to get the difference here. Imperialism is the big idea, the overall strategy of one state dominating another. But colonialism, that's the specific action. That's putting boots on the ground, planting a flag, and claiming the land as your own. You could say one is the game plan and the other is the actual play on the field. And this just perfectly illustrates the consequences. During the so-called scramble for Africa, European powers literally sat down with a map and just drew straight lines. Lines that cut right through the middle of ethnic and linguistic groups that had been there for centuries. They mashed rival groups together and split allied ones apart, basically setting the stage for decades of conflict that we're still dealing with today. And the human cost of this was just immense. I mean, just look at the Somali people. One single cohesive nation suddenly split across three different countries, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Kenya. Overnight, they were turned into minorities by lines on a map they had absolutely no say in. This shows just how deeply colonialism can shape a place's identity. On one tiny island, Hispaniola, you had two different colonial powers with two totally different economic models. The French built a brutal plantation economy in the West, while the Spanish did something else entirely in the East. The result? Two profoundly different nations, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, that exist to this day, sharing one island. But of course, history is always a story of action and reaction. So now, we're going to look at the powerful counterforces that fought back, as people demanded the right to erase those colonial lines and draw a map that actually reflected their own identities. The 20th century saw this absolute tidal wave of change. You had everything from the American colonies breaking from Britain, to the incredibly violent partition of India and Pakistan after British rule, to Algeria's long, hard-won independence from France. All across the globe, nationalist movements rose up and successfully created dozens of new sovereign states. Massive empires don't just get conquered, sometimes they just crumble from the inside out. The collapse of the Soviet Union wasn't a single event. It was a slow process, a de-evolution. As nationalist tensions grew and grew, power started shifting from the center out to the edges, until the entire structure finally gave way in 1991, leaving a whole host of new independent countries behind. And this process of redrawing borders from within, it's not just ancient history. It's happening right now. You see movements in Scotland pushing to become independent from the United Kingdom, or in Catalonia trying to gain autonomy from Spain. These are modern examples of devolution in action. The map is still very much in motion. Okay, so let's bring all these forces together and look at one of the most dramatic, most violent examples of a map in motion, the breakup of Yugoslavia. This is what happens when sovereignty, nationalism, and history all collide at once. This timeline gives us the essential backstory. You see, Yugoslavia was never really a natural nation-state. It was created after World War I by outsiders who essentially stitched together a bunch of rival ethnic and religious groups. It held together for decades, but by the 1980s, those old seams started to tear as calls for self-determination just got louder and louder. This table really breaks down the tragic logic of the conflict. It all started with an artificial state that led to conflict when different ethnic groups, driven by that powerful ideal of self-determination, demanded their own nation-states. The result was a brutal, horrific war, but ultimately the creation of new independent states like Croatia and Slovenia that more closely reflected the ethnic reality on the ground. And that right there is the most important thing to take away from all this. The puzzle of our world map is never, ever truly finished. The very same forces that created, shattered, and then redrew Yugoslavia are still at work all over the globe today. Which leaves us with a really powerful and maybe a little unsettling question. Which piece of the map will be the next to move?